everyone. It being 7 o'clock, I'd like to call the November 21st meeting of the Capital Planning Committee to order. Tonight on the agenda, we'll be holding public hearings to hear capital requests from the public library, municipal facilities, school technology, and municipal technology. First on the agenda, we have the capital requests from the public library. Those projects are numbered 6 through 9 on your project detail sheets. I see our library director, trustees, and library staff here in the audience, so I'd like to invite our library director and staff to come forward and present the library projects.
We're going to do this and call up different people as we get to the next project.
Good evening, Becky and Mike.
Evening. I'm Becky. I'm the library director for those of you who I haven't met before. And I understand there are quite a few new members on the committee, so welcome. This year we have, it's unusual in that we have 4 different projects that we are presenting to you. A couple of them are things that come up every couple of years, like the computers, and then the carpeting is something that is finishing out a 3-phased project. And then the truck is something that we have a great need for, and then the retaining wall will have one of our trustees who can explain that to us too. So, but I think we need to start off with our computer replacement. And as I said, we come before you every 4 to 6 years in order to ask for this. And even computers for us are like paper and pencil. They're definitely required. I do have a technology person on my staff, Mike Harridan here, who is going to explain a little bit about what we need for this year. So.
Okay. So we've asked for this year for $28,380 to replace 19 desktop machines and 12 laptop machines for a total of 31 computers. There's a mixture of these machines. Some will be used for patron stations, others will be used for staff stations. Our goal at the library is try to get 5 to 6 years of usage out of a desktop machine, 4 or 5 years out of a laptop machine. So we've been very fortunate in the past to be able to replace those within that cycle. We'll be back again next year, so you know, but I'm here for any questions anybody might have.
Just to mention for folks, I did have a question from someone, and I did research it just for the committee's benefit. And the last time the library did a computer replacement it was in 2 phases, in fiscal year 16 and fiscal year 17. So just wanted to mention that.
How many total workstations do you have?
Workstations is about 90.
90.
I mean, I call tablets workstations, so we'll call them end user devices, so 90.
Okay.
It's a quiet committee.
Yeah.
I know.
5 years is a long time for a computer.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Well, I mean, I guess if you come into the library and you see all of the people who are working on the computers, you kind of get the reason why we need computers. You know, it's access to our catalog. It's also people doing research. It's I think it's one of the most integral ways that we sort of level the playing field for people in the community, for the people the have-nots who don't have computers or have a computer that doesn't have as much speed, or there are people who you know, their computer breaks and they have to come in and print something, whatever. So.
And we've been fortunate in the past to be able to buy machines that are, you know, relatively robust for that point in time. Like all the machines we have now are 8 gigabits in memory. We'll be going up to 16 with the next wave.
What do you do with the old machines?
They get repurposed until they're like about 7 or 8 years old. We have about 9 machines right now that are used as catalog stations. There's other machines that are used for the volunteer station, and there's some spares that we keep.
And have you always done the refreshes in large batches over a 2-year period, or have you
Well,
tried staggering?
Yeah, I've only been there 4 years, and this seems to be the pattern. I'm just picking up on the pattern that was going on before me.
Yeah, and I've been here for almost 18 years, and this is the way that we've been doing it. I mean, that way you have machines that are all of approximately the same age. When you're upgrading them or installing software, you're able to keep everything all at the same level. And
And especially for the patrons, we want to be able to provide a consistent experience out on the floor there. We have 30 computers that are used for patrons, not counting catalog machines, and we wouldn't want to get into a situation where people were fighting over better computers.
Okay, great.
All right, so the next thing that we have, you can
Thank
stay,
you. Oh.
because it's carpeting.
Oh, okay.
And so, so the next thing that in our priority list is to finish out the carpeting project. And we came 3 years ago, I guess, and requested to have the whole library redone. And the number that we had at that point was 150,000. And so after some discussion, the capital planning decided that that was just too big of a chunk, you know, for them to give out that year, and so they graciously decided that we could phase it in. And so we ended up doing the main floor of the library for the first year, and then just this past year, we did the downstairs in the reference area, and then the children's room. And so what we have left is the administrative offices and some cove molding around the edges in the library that we have to install too at this point, so. But if you notice, we had 50-50 and 25. So we actually, by doing it this way, what we also were able to do was stage it, and so we were able to keep the library open all the time that we were doing it, and the workers came in and did it from 6 to 2, and then we were able to have, like, if we were doing upstairs, we had downstairs open, if we were doing downstairs, we had upstairs open, and because they were done by 2 o'clock, then the staff would move all the furniture. We got these great slides so that we could stage it and move everything into one area, and then they would come back the next morning and do the new area. So we saved quite a bit of money by doing some of that ourselves.
Very good.
Do you plan on doing the same thing with this phase?
Yeah, no. I mean, the price that I have, the quote is based on us doing some staging ourselves. But this is more office furniture, so they actually are going to do some of the disassembly for us. And, but it's amazing what they could do. I was so surprised, because we had a couple of offices that they did, and we're like, oh, we're gonna have to take all this down, and they were like, oh, no. They just jacked it up for a second and put it underneath, because we do carpet tiles, so it's actually a little bit easier to fit them into the spaces, too.
It worked out well, because I knew the funding was limited, of course, but one of my concerns was that over time, the price would go up, but that's
Yes.
great that you're able to do it under the original
Yeah, and
budget.
we've been really happy with the company that we worked with so far, just in that they had done over 35 libraries before us, so they kind of knew the drill about working around stacks and moving furniture and things like that, so. All right, so, any questions on that one? All right, Brian, you want to come up? This is Brian Herzog, who has been doing some of the research on our request for a truck replacement.
Hello, everyone.
Good evening, Brian.
So the history with this particular truck that we have is that I think about 5 years ago, it was a hand-me-down from DPW, and we use it on a daily basis to go back and forth between the main library and the McKay branch, take books over to the gym to get ready for the book sale, and run other errands here and there. And this one is 2004, and the mileage is relatively low, but the maintenance costs have continued to grow. This year, we were without the truck for about a month while we were trying to replace the fuel tank. And DPW loaned us a truck in that meantime, but we would like to replace this truck in a longer-term process rather than relying on their generosity to fill in or go without for a long time.
And one thing that in some of our discussions with DPW and with John here too, is that because we had good luck with something being cycled and recycled and for us to use it, we were just wanted to know if there was some other thing that was going to become available soon. And it does look like if I know there's a hybrid vehicle request that is also on your capital request. If that were to be filled, then there would be 2 trucks available that we could choose from that would work ideally for us, and would be a lot less than the full price of a new vehicle. So we like that idea of recycling and repurposing. That's kind of what libraries do,
So what is the 30,000 based on?
That is based on MHA EC pricing.
For a new
For
truck?
That's for a new one, yeah.
I think a Ford F-150 is what we priced it at, but we actually also called a dealer that deals with trucks, because the MHEC pricing didn't include a cap on the back. So we wanted to get an actual pricing from a dealer with what we would need.
Right.
Right,
And it
it's
was right
important
in
for
that
the cap,
ballpark.
because we,
Yes.
our boxes of books. We don't want them getting wet.
And the MHA EC pricing that Brian's referring to is a collaborative. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but it's a collaborative that municipalities can use to purchase. It's almost like buying off a state bid list, so you get a good price.
Yeah, and it's very striking, actually, that they usually are able to come up with a really good deal. And what's nice about it is the price is the price is the price. You're not doing a lot of bartering or.
So we'll hear more further on and under when our DPW director comes up, but we appreciate our DPW director and facilities director working with us to see if there is a vehicle that may be able to be repurposed for the library. So that's a possibility for that project.
All right, so now we're going to do the retaining wall, so maybe I'll have David come up. Brought my whole posse of people.
Hopefully this will stay.
I can hold it if you want while you talk. Brian, you want to just stand? Vanna.
Multi-purpose. Weren't kidding when you said you like to reuse things.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Actually, does that one have a poster on the back? Usually we print
Oh, really?
posters with another poster on the back, too. Paper costs,
I'm David Braslow. I'm one of the library trustees. I've been a library trustee now for, I don't know, a long time, 10 years or longer.
Good long time.
And we wanted to introduce you to this project. We've done a fair amount of work to try to figure out how to address a situation that we have with the retaining wall at the library, and wanted to fill you in on what we've done so far and what our thoughts are about moving this project forward. So to help you sort of visualize the picture, in the top left is the picture of the library from Boston Road, and you can see that the elevation of the library parking lot is higher than the elevation of the road and the sidewalk. And between the two is a retaining wall that's made out of sort of interlocking blocks that are together. And the picture below it on the left, you can see what the condition of the wall is. The wall is now leaning out towards the towards the sidewalk. As a result of the weight of the soil behind the wall, snow plowing, drainage issues in the library. And in addition, the picture at the bottom, you can see that there actually isn't a way to walk along the sidewalk and pass between the wall and the utility pole there in one section of.
And that has been a
The
longstanding issue. Like as I said, my very first week of working at the library, I had a person from the Commission on Disabilities come to me and say, "What are you going to do about the sidewalk?" And I went to the town manager at the time, which was Bernie, and I said, "What are we going to do?" And he says, "Oh, don't worry, all the utilities are going to be sunk underneath." Well, 18 years later, it hasn't happened, so we do still have an issue with accessibility.
And if you see the picture on the upper right, that's the view from the library parking lot looking out to Boston Road into the plaza past it. And you can see that there isn't very good definition between where the parking lot ends and the drop off to the sidewalk and to the road. There used to be a line of shrubs along there that were planted as part of the original library project.
But
and-
because of the sand and the salt from the snow plowing, those ended up, we have a few that are left in the corner, but most of them ended up,
And the result of that, if you look down at the next picture, is that people have inadvertently driven off the wall. You can see the tire tracks through there, which obviously is an issue both for them and for us. It causes damage to the wall. It's dangerous for the sidewalk, and undoubtedly that did some damage to the vehicle when it went over the edge of the wall. So our thoughts are, and we've engaged Katie Enright, who many of you know, a civil engineer, to help evaluate what the situation is. And she, at our expense, has developed a plan of the existing conditions for the wall and for the parking lot behind it. We've developed a concept that would replace the wall with a new wall that would be stepped back so that there would actually be
room to create an
Right.
ADA accessible sidewalk.
that the wall would have proper drainage behind it so that when it rains and when it snows, that the weight of the water wouldn't caused the wall to fail again.
Well, and the wall itself was a facing wall that was built after the parking lot and the library built. It was about a year and a half after the library project was done. And it used to be an old, more of a crumbling stone wall in front of it. But it wasn't built thinking about the weight, I think, that long-term. I mean, it's been 17 years, so it did. But it's,
And at
we'll do it right this time.
Right,
Yeah.
at the same time, we would make some traffic pattern improvements to the parking lot itself. For anybody who uses the library regularly, the traffic is intended to go one way through the parking lot, but people inevitably go both directions because the aisle is wide and the openings are wide and don't necessarily direct the traffic. And
So if we shorten that aisle because of stepping it back, because we make more space for the sidewalk, then that maybe communicates the direction a little easier. Along with that, then we can also extend the islands that, as you go into the parking lot, so that it's obvious that you shouldn't take a left, that you need to go around. And the same thing at the end, when you're coming out of the library parking lot, we still have people sometimes who think they could take a right into the oncoming traffic. So we would want to extend the island there too, so that it was a natural curve into the lane of traffic.
so the ultimate goal would be improve the flow of traffic in the parking lot, leave enough room so that the snow can be pushed out of the spaces, but doesn't go over the retaining wall onto the sidewalk and occasionally into the road. And the bottom picture on the right puts some kind of attractive guardrail to further delineate the fact that there's actually a drop-off there so that people don't inadvertently
We want to do
drive
something
off.
with the guardrail that maybe looks a little more natural, so that it kind of blends with that whole park-like atmosphere that we have with the Scobori or Greenway.
Right, it might be consistent with the Bruce Freeman Trail or,
Right, exactly. And, that way we'll have some curb appeal, So does that make sense to people? We've been talking with the town and with DPW about, because this is obviously not just a library project, because it has to be coordinated with the sidewalks and just the whole vision for the center in general. And there's just so many things that are coming now to the center, so we understand that we might want to get more information about what's happening and what the traffic patterns and the walking patterns end up being for the people who are moving into the center. And so I had some conversation with Paul and with John and with Steve Yonley, who is the town engineer, about how that would all work together, and they had some ideas too, but we're definitely working together to try to figure out the best way to do it.
and we have a conceptual design that lays out how this looks from a civil engineering perspective, and the estimate that's in the capital request is the result of getting some indicative prices from landscapers
Right,
to.
3 different landscapers that also included people who could do paving and do the saw cutting into the parking lot, and also we have a couple of islands that used to have trees in them that also unfortunately failed, and so we could remove those extra islands too and create some more parking spaces.
Pick up a couple of spaces. So what questions might we be able to answer about this? Does that generally make sense in terms of what the problem is and how we think we can address it?
Any questions? Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
As the committee's reviewing, I just wanted to mention, I did speak with Becky, and as you're reviewing the projects, they're numbered 6 through 9. Those are listed in the order of need and priority for the library, so just when it comes to the final.
All right.
Thank you both.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, we have municipal facilities, which we're going to skip ahead. We're going to look at Project 18. You see our DPW and Facilities Director here. Good evening, Gary.
Good evening. Thank you for having me again. It's one request, and the request is for hybrid vehicles. This actual request has been on the capital for the last 4 years, and we've passed on it all every year based on the needs. And to follow in Brian and Becky's presentation, we always take vehicles and we extend the life of them. As they said, the 2004 Chevy Colorado was actually Board of Healths that we had 5 years ago sent to them. And there's a 2005 Ford Explorer with 138,000 miles on it that Facilities has, that came from the original sewer project that they've been using for the last 6 years. And both of those are at end of life. So the thought in this process, of course, would be that we would be able to take one of the two vehicles now, which are both 2012s. One's a Jeep Patriot with 49,291 miles on it. The other one's a Ford Escape with 67,893. Send one to the library, send one to Facilities, which would take the needs of continuing what we do and giving them service vehicles that will do. The one for Facilities is mainly used to deliver mail between the schools and even other towns at time to time when we have to go to Neshoba and other places to deliver to them. And as Becky had explained too, they use theirs to go back and forth to the library and to do stuff. So that would open up the purchase of 3 hybrid vehicles. They're plug-in electric vehicles, and what would happen is we would take the 2 that were gone, the Jeep and the Ford Escape, and we replace those. And then the third one would be a pool car here at Town Hall. They're lacking the use of vehicles for the amount of people that they do have. So that's how we would utilize the 3 new vehicles. Part of this is a program that we went into years ago when we were one of the first 51 communities to become green under the DOER, Department of Energy Resources. And basically, to meet the needs, we have to continue to produce gas-efficient vehicles and get rid of non-efficient vehicles, and that's what we need to do. Just to let you know, we were able over the past 4 years where we had to continue to bring this down the road. Departments, fire in particular, over the last 2 times, certain people within the department can have these types of vehicles, others can't, because what they do, you don't plow with these. You know, they don't work in certain instances with the fire department at all, but they did purchase a Ford Fusion hybrid during that period of time, which kept us with the thing, and the chief now drives a Toyota Highlander, which is a hybrid. So we've kind of found a way to meet our needs and to kind of stay under the auspice of the DOER to stay with it, but I really think this purchase shouldn't be kicked down the road this time. And again, we'll be getting rid of those 2 that we told you about, the Explorer and the pickup truck, so we'll get rid of a couple more that aren't as efficient and replace them with efficient vehicles.
What vehicles are you looking at?
Actually, it's the Mitsubishi Outlander. It's an all-wheel drive, like I said, plug-in hybrid. Talking to the dealer and test driving it at the show, I was at the National Grid Energy Summit. Based on the way the vehicles will be used, it's probably a good chance that 75% of the time you'll never get into the gas part of it.
So what's the estimated MPGs?
I want to say it's 33 and either 39 or 40 highway. The Explorer is about 13, if that, on a good day.
And which one did you say would go to the libraries?
They could choose. Either one of them. Yeah. So if they take the Escape, the Patriot will go to Facilities.
And when this happens, when a vehicle from one department goes to another, does funds exchange?
No,
change hands? Okay.
no,
We
we
don't change
usually don't
title
charge
or
for them or
anything.
anything, no. We just, no, because it's all purchased through
Right.
capital, through the town. We don't do that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, we have school facilities, and I just wanted to mention these, what we're going to do, we're going to have the school facilities projects, which are numbered 19 to 25, and then connected to that is the school technology projects number 26 to 28, so we're just going to switch and just flip and do municipal technology at the end, so. Dr.
they
J.
kind of
Lang, yeah.
Combined
And
a little bit.
before Dr. Lang starts, I just want to mention the committee. I gave you a copy of, Dr. Lang provided us with a memo just outlining the school committee's priority order for all the projects. And then behind that, you have the 5-year plan from Dr. Lang, just so you can see the progression of projects over the next 4 years after this. So, sure.
So, I'm sorry, so listed in what you gave us, John,
Yep,
it's
so-
not listed in priority, correct?
Right, because what.
This is
the-
priority.
Right, and the reason we do that is the listing that I distribute to everyone,
Right.
we have them broken out by school buildings. You can look and see like, okay, what's going on at Byam School over the next 5 years, what's going on at Parker. And so that's why this memo is helpful, because the superintendent ranks them in priority order on here. So when we come down to the final analysis,
We'll look at
we will,
this.
right, we'll go by this memo.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Yep, thank you very much for having us this evening. I have some supporters about 3 rooms back in case we need anything. It's always nice. But no, thank you very much for hearing from us tonight. John did pass around a couple of documents. I do have an extra copy if anyone needs one of the priority sheet, as well as the cut sheets. About 2 or 3 years back, we spent a significant amount of time doing a facilities assessment, putting together a 10-year capital plan. So before you this evening, we usually look at things in 5-year segments, so you have that 5-year breakdown in front of you. I do have copies if you need one in the end. And then what I did for this evening is actually, that's why some of our technology and facility projects are combined, because I put the presentation together based on our priority order. So as we get requests in from all of our different departments and all of our different schools, at the school department, we take them all together, we evaluate them, we prioritize them, and then we bring them forward to this committee. So the first project that we actually have before you this evening for consideration is actually some additional funding that's required from a couple of projects from last school year. So in any given year, as you'll find out if you haven't been here before, there's a certain number of projects that you can accomplish in a year. Some end up getting kicked to subsequent years. And then we go back and reprioritize the projects each year. But last year in fiscal '20, we had a project that was moved forward, and it was funded. Town meeting funded it also at town meeting, and it had to do with replacing some of the HVAC heating and ventilation units in the cafeterias at the Byam and Harrington schools, and then a makeup air handling unit at Harrington. And we had received some quotes and some costs when we did the Durham Whittier facilities assessment. But after it had been approved at town meeting and we actually went out to start to solicit quotes for the actual work, because of the age of the units and the replacement cost for the units, to actually replace them based on the actual quotes we received is significantly higher than we had come forward with. So our first project is actually kind of a carryover from fiscal '20. We have funds that have been allocated to this project, but based on the actual quotes that have come in for the work to be performed next summer and the summer of '20, we require an additional $188,392. So we feel that's a pretty hard number. Again, that's a piece of a larger project that was partially funded last year. And again, we didn't realize that it was going to be that significantly underfunded until we got into the actual work with the individuals around quotes, putting specifications together for units and whatnot. So the first thing we would like to do is go back and actually allocate funding in fiscal '21 to be combined with the fiscal '20 appropriation to be able to complete that project next summer. Second for us is, this is actually a technology project. So the school department also worked with a number of vendors over the last couple of years to put together a kind of a comprehensive school facility plan. In town, we historically, when it comes to our security systems and security cameras within our buildings, we've had very good exterior coverage of our schools, and we've also had interior coverage at the high school. 2 years ago, we added some interior cameras in the lobbies of each of our elementary and middle schools, but that was the extent of it. So we knew we needed to have a longer-term plan around adding some cameras, both inside the buildings, also some better cameras on the exterior of the buildings. We worked closely with a couple of different vendors to come in and do an assessment of our system, recommend some upgrades to the system. The Chelmsford Police Department was wonderful. They were a partner in that as well, and looked at the layout of cameras, where they should go, policies, procedures, and whatnot. We also added, or wanted to add, door triggering mechanisms. So if a door happens to be, that shouldn't be open during the school day, if it's pegged open or it's held open, that we would receive an alarm on the system so that we would know that we had a fault in the system that had to be checked on. And also some additional or some new kind of panic buttons within the buildings to be installed. Last year so we received approximately $1.5 million proposal, or that was our proposal to do soup to nuts the entire school system. We knew that was a significant amount of money. It was a big investment. We also wanted to do it in pieces. So we basically broke down the plan to be funded over 3 years. Last year was the first year of a 3-year plan, and we decided to do, as the school department, the middle schools first, because the middle schools didn't have any interior cameras with the exception of the lobbies. So when that project was funded, it was approximately $500,000. This past summer, both Parker and McCarthy received new equipment, the door peg mechanisms. All of that has been installed, and it's all being actually programmed at this point in time. In fiscal &21 is year 2 of a 3-year rollout. So we're before this evening seeking funding to go back to Chelmsford High School for approximately $270,000. And again, I'll after this slide, I'll go on and show you what actually got accomplished, just to give you a sense at Parker and McCarthy of what would be coming to the high school. We do have a very sophisticated security plan that we offered this to the capital plan last year as well, the committee. If you want to come by the school department, we'll make an appointment and certainly sit with you and show you the plan. We can't present it as a public document because then it would become public, and our security plan and protocols are not public. But if any members have questions or want to see the technologies and work or whatnot, you're certainly welcome to call us, make an appointment, and come by, and we'll show you the system, we'll show you the documentation. But we just didn't want to convey it as a public document and then have it be accessible for obvious security reasons. And then in year 3, we would be back before you next year to complete the elementary schools, so Byam Center, South Row, and Harrington. That cost for year 3 does go back up closer to $500,000. Year 2 is a little bit less expensive because we already have a significant number of cameras at Chelmsford High School, so the wiring is in place. There were a number of cameras that actually just need to be switched out. There are a few spots that need additional cameras, but a lot of the work at Chelmsford High School, there are a significant number of doors and entryways to the building. So it's the door alarm systems, it's the door peg open systems. But to give you a little bit of a sense of what actually was accomplished this past summer at McCarthy and Parker, again, without getting into the specifics of the system, but Parker actually had 65 physical cameras added, and again, primarily to the inside of the building, a lot of hallways, corridors, and whatnot. A lot of those 65 cameras actually have multiple lenses, so one camera might have 2, 3, up to 4 different angles, so that you can see all ways of a hallway. There are 92 technical coverage shots that we now have inside and outside the Parker Middle School. At McCarthy, 68 physical cameras resulted in over 100 different camera shots, both inside and outside the building. This system is fully integrated with the town system and the police system, so police dispatch actually pulls up and can view our cameras at the same time we can within the schools. I can at central office, they can at the individual schools, see what's happening within the buildings. So we're all on the same unified camera system within the building. And so year 2 would actually be a continuation of that. In addition to the cameras, again, what was significant for us is at both McCarthy Parker, and this would happen at the high school, the door contacts were installed. And again, that's going to give it a little bit of an alert. If by chance a student, could be a staff member, also goes out during the day and happens to peg a door open, we don't want to have that access to the public. So the system could be triggered to let us know that. We had some earphones installed, particularly at the cafeteria. That's an area you don't really think of, but they receive deliveries during the day, and people typically don't come into the main office because of where the cafeterias are located in the back of the buildings. They have their own receiving doors and whatnot. But we didn't want a situation where someone rings the doorbell and you're opening the door, you don't know who's on the other side of it. So we did install at the 2 middle schools those earphone readers. So that has been a significant upgrade, which would happen at the other schools as well. And then there is a whole monitoring aspect to this. So again, our offices at the different schools can actually now monitor an array of cameras. We can see them at central office in an emergency situation, and they are all tied in with the police department dispatch. So that has happened as well. And we used to have some kind of remote kind of panic buttons, but this would actually have some hardwired panic buttons in the system that would again ring directly into the police dispatch. Right now, they're going through a third-party company and then getting called in to the police if there ever were an issue. So we want to cut that middleman out and go direct to the police department if necessary. But wanted to give you a little sense of kind of what we've been doing and what is part of that plan. Next project for us is actually two-part. So this relates to the Parker Middle School kitchen. So the first piece, and I do have this together because we're talking about the Parker Middle School. The first piece was a code compliance upgrade, and then a couple of items down was a larger dollar amount, $641, for an entire upgrade of that particular kitchen. Over the last couple of years, and there have been a number of larger projects that I think, not only for the schools, but for other town departments, that get bumped from year to year just because of the size and the dollar value of them. And again, it is difficult to get everyone's wants and needs met at any particular time. But we have an issue where we have 3 kitchens in the district right now, the high school, the McCarthy, and the Parker, which are actually functioning preparation kitchens. So they cook, scratch meals on site each day in those schools. And those school facilities, primarily the high school at this point, is also serving as a preparation site for our elementary schools. So they cook meals, they get shipped out to the elementary schools, both breakfast and lunch from those facilities. We did make a decision not to invest in the next 5 to 10 years in the elementary kitchens themselves, just because of the amount of meals that they're serving and the economy of scale that can actually be derived from preparing our meals in one of the larger kitchens, either the middle school or the high school. But you'll see at both Parker, McCarthy, and the high school, this year Parker is on the list because that was the one that was in most need. But you'll see larger kitchen upgrades at those particular schools. But when it came to a code compliance standpoint, again, when the Board of Health comes through or the building inspectors come through to note different deficiencies within our buildings, one of them is that we need to install a code compliant kitchen hood system at the Parker School, which we don't have right now. Second, and I'll show you some pictures in a little bit, most of our kitchens actually just have like a cement ceiling. It's a porous ceiling. But to meet code, you really need to have like a drop-in washable ceiling. The floors, particularly at the Parker kitchen, are just a kind of a concrete that has been waxed over the time. But you're really supposed to have a non-slip code-compliant floor. And then again, we're looking to do a complete remodel of that kitchen. I'll show you in a couple of minutes some of the pictures just to give you a sense of what's there. And just wanted to note, we do actually, at the Parker kitchen alone, prepare about 65,000 meals per year. So it is a school that's producing some pretty significant quantity of food, both breakfast and lunch for kids. A couple of the different comments that we are responding to as well, just through different Board of Health reports as they come through. They have also cited the kitchen floor condition as not being sanitary. A lot of that, quite honestly, it is clean. It's an issue of it is just so worn, it just does not look clean. And again, I'll show you some pictures in a little bit. We unfortunately had a story about a week or two ago as well that made the news about some of our kitchens. I think, unfortunately, the hard part, when anyone does a report like that, they don't necessarily come to you for comment right away. And what was actually pulled was some of the records from, up to a year ago. And whenever we do have a deficiency that's cited by the Board of Health, the Food and Nutrition Office or the maintenance group immediately responds. And on those particular issues that were cited, there was an immediate response and the issues were remedied. Unfortunately, in those kind of stories, you're always kind of put behind the 8 ball in a response type mode. So, it was embarrassing. We want to remedy that going forward so that these things don't happen. But we also, just when you take a look at some of the pictures, we don't have enough room physically within the freezers or the dry storage areas within the school. So you will see boxes upon boxes of just different materials. The $2 amounts that are included there, it was about $123,000 for the code compliance issues at the school. Obviously, that was ranked as a higher priority because it was almost a have to because of the code compliance issues. But we would like to do the renovation at the same time. There is some economy and scale in doing that. And again, I think when you see some of the pictures, you'll understand what we're talking about. So you do have them in front of you, but when you walk into the Parker kitchen, the picture on the left is just technically you're walking in and you see the service line in front where the kids are going. So the front is where the kids would be standing, and then you see a backside where the staff would be standing. Typically, what you're going to see in kitchens nowadays, if this was a redesign, this would be a whole preparation and serving area. Typically, that's in a rectangle in the middle of the room, and then students would come in and they would filter around all the different sides of the cafeteria, take their food items, and actually then kind of leave the cafeteria to pay and move out. But we actually have a backlog now where you try to get in. We have a long line that forms because we only have that single serving area. On the left, this is technically the left side of the kitchen. The left serving area is actually non-operational. It had broken a number of years ago, and we don't actually even have the ability to do that. So we have kids now just coming in one or two when you potentially could have 4 different lines of traffic coming through that kitchen. And again, I think if you look at some of these pictures, you get a sense of the ceiling and the lighting. It's just very open. Again, it's that porous concrete, which to meet health code is supposed to be a flat washable ceiling, and we do need some additional lighting within there. A couple of pictures of just some of the, it's just an aged facility, particularly here, again, if you look at the floor is clean. It's just very difficult to maintain because of the age of the space. Another shot of just the floor, and again, it's that concrete. It has, various coats of wax on it from over the years. It is a clean surface, but this was something that was written up. And then again, this is just a picture of the dry storage. Everything is, relatively neat and clean, but, we don't necessarily have shelving. We don't have just the proper setup within that dry storage. So that is one of the major projects that we would like to try to address this particular year at the Parker. Moving, do we have any questions yet?
Actually, did have one question on Parker. You said there'd be some economies of scale if you did both together. Do these numbers reflect that, or are these numbers
No.
for individual projects?
So these numbers were actually recommended as part of that Jordan Whittier study. So this is also going to come up with the McCarthy. So they are separate numbers at this point in time to do the projects independently. Both on this project and McCarthy, we're actually in the process right now of fine-tuning some quotes, and we do have some vendors actually trying to give us some tentative pricing that we may be able to bring back to you at the next time we meet in December if there is some economy to be realized. We're all trying to work to whittle down these numbers as best we can, so that is a work in progress, both at Parker and next at McCarthy.
So you'll be able to potentially get us numbers for what the projects would look like if they were done together?
Correct. And again, at this point in time, again, I say it's worst-case scenario, but then we kind of got bitten last year when the HVAC stuff, when we went out to get the quotes, didn't come out that way. But we're feeling that these are, hopefully worst-case scenarios if we had to run them independent. There's the issue of mobilizing as well, though. Even to do some of these code compliance issues, if they're related to the floor, basically everything's got to come out, everything is got to go back in if we were to put in, like, say, a quarry tile floor or something like that. So there really is some just efficiency in if you're going to pull all that equipment out to just put your new in or to revamp it. But that is information that we're working on for you. This next project, again, you may realize a little bit of savings by doing it at the same time. The McCarthy Middle School Auditorium has been long on this list. It actually predates me even coming. It has been a project that just kind of year after year keeps getting pushed because of the size. But aside from our PAC at the high school, which is a phenomenal studio in a performance area, we have a high demand for additional performance space within the district. Parker Middle School, our other middle school, doesn't have an auditorium, so really all traffic within the district gets pushed to McCarthy. Even for our elementary schools, they have a lot of their spring performances at McCarthy if they can't get into the PAC because that's our secondary space. And it's in need of some pretty significant upgrades. So again, these are some numbers that have been floating around for quite some time. But this particular budget, $669,000, would be to replace and upgrade the curtains that are on the stage, and then 3 major components. The lighting within the facility, and it's the performance lighting, not the actual space lighting, the sound system, which is in need of an upgrade, and then also seating. And just to show you a couple of different pictures of the auditorium, it's just a very old auditorium, kind of 60s vintage. The seats are honestly not that comfortable, particularly with the wooden back. A lot are in disrepair. You'll see some that are kind of down because they just don't have the spring neck mechanism anymore. We've done the best we can to, the carpeting in the aisles is refreshed. We did that a few years ago. We keep concrete underneath the stairs, just for spills or cleaning. It's a little bit easier. But on the far left picture, you can actually see at the very end of the auditorium, we don't actually have a professional space where you would control your light board or sounds. So they've removed a row of seats and they built a little platform, which really isn't up to code, and they perform or operate the lights and the sound from that particular area. So under this particular program also, so I'm standing on the stage on the far left, looking out into the auditorium, just to again give you that look. And if you look up in the ceiling is technically the lighting area, and I honestly hadn't seen that before. There's a catwalk up there where you actually, just from a safety standpoint, honestly these days isn't that that safe. But students and staff would actually be up on the ceiling, controlling the lighting during shows or changing out lighting during sets. So in a new system, you would actually have lights that would lower from the ceiling on a kind of a track. You would make your lighting switches on the ground, and then it would raise back up. So you wouldn't physically have people being up in the ceiling, either during plays or even just to change a light bulb, things along those lines. And then lastly, on the stage, there were, and again, theater is kind of new to me, so I'm getting up to speed on the theater, but I couldn't believe how many rows of different curtains there are. But on the left, you're actually, a lot of the curtains are just in disrepair. And honestly, for the amount of people that we have coming through, it doesn't give a good appearance. Never mind that, I think the kids and staff deserve better during the school day. But even for outsiders coming into Chelmsford to see a show, it doesn't really put on the look and the feel that we would like them to see. So I think it is time that we finally invest some money in the McCarthy Auditorium and try to renovate and refresh that. If you know McCarthy Middle School, you have the auditorium, and then if you're looking at the auditorium, there's a hallway, there's some classrooms, and there's another hallway, and there's one lecture hall within the school. And that lecture hall, I don't actually have a picture of it here. It was in a previous slide, I think, with a little project detail. But that lecture hall also is in very tough shape. So there is funding, $110,000 to update that particular lecture hall. It's used for a lot of science programs. There's a teacher workstation. If you think about kind of being in the theater, it's got like theater seating. The seating is, again, very outdated. A lot are in disrepair. And there's funding we're carrying to basically remove the old seating, replace the flooring. If you've been to the high school, we updated one of the lecture halls at the high school 2 years ago. It would be the same type setup where you would put a nice carpet in, you put new stadium kind of theater seats. And part of the reason we think there might be an economy of scale here also is because the same seating company that would be doing the auditorium would be doing the lecture hall at the same time, and the seats are the big cost. So if they're gonna come out to do, the auditorium, to add another, I wanna say it's 65 or 70 seats, would be much more economical in that room. So we are trying to work with them to fine tune that number at this point in time. But that would include, again, the new flooring, the seating, the teacher workstation at the front of the room, and, some type of a presentation station. We've been using a lot of interactive televisions at this point, or flat panel TVs, so that would be included as well. All right, so I'm now going to skip over the Parker kitchen because I had lumped that together with the other one. And we have a couple of projects that have kind of carried over from the previous year. So when we went through our reprioritization, these projects were in the fiscal 20 capital, but they weren't prioritized as high, so they got bumped into 21. And again, we had to go through and reprioritize. So the first one is approximately $150,000 to clean, repair, and service a significant amount of HVAC ductwork and handling units throughout the schools. There was also a hot water convector unit at Westlands that needed to be replaced, and then a VFD, variable frequency drive, I believe, on rooftop unit 18 at the high school. So these are things that we're just kind of maintaining as we go along. Gary and Kathleen from DPW maintain and just keep things going until we can actually make the replacement. But that's approximately $150,000. We have a smaller number that we've been carrying for about $32,000 worth of random VCT, basically the 12 by 12 floor tiles in the schools that are either in different cracked or disrepair of different levels. Again, if they're significant and they're a trip hazard, they basically are replaced, on a one-off type basis. But we do have a significant amount at the Harrington cafeteria, throughout McCarthy Middle School, just as you're walking around, particularly even down near the modular classrooms in the hallway. The tiles seem to be popping, and then over at the Westlands in the bathroom. So not a significant number, but when you compile them at all the different schools, it was about $32,000. Two technology projects. Actually, we're going to save you $100,000 because we're going to withdraw the firewall upgrade. That is something I mentioned to the chair of the school committee last evening when we were working with Bill, our technology director. He was able to actually fund a new firewall when we rolled out a one-on-one implementation for computers this year. And we had done some significant upgrades to our network, and we were able to actually pay for, within that upgrade, a new firewall. So long story short, that's $100,000 that we don't need right now, so we can cut that off the list. I thought you'd be happy, John.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And then lastly, this is kind of a standing item that we've had on our capital. Again, we did roll out the first year of what will be an annual one-on-one initiative with utilizing Chromebooks in the schools. We're providing every 5th and 9th grade student with a device that they will then keep for 4 years. So our incoming 5th grade students will keep it for middle school, turn it in when they go to high school, they'll get a new device for high school. Next year, again, the current 5th will go to 6th, they'll keep their device, the new 5th will get new ones, the new 9th will get new ones. So in 4 years' time, everyone in the district, grades 5 to 12, will end up having their own device. So we, before doing that, stepped back and actually upgraded the network, we upgraded the Wi-Fi within the district, we're in pretty good shape as far as that is concerned. And then one of the things that we try to do is update our classrooms to have the new interactive, again, like TVs, monitor displays, teacher setups. And we've been trying to do at least 25 a year to keep current. So doing 25 a year, they're approximately $3,000 per setup, and that's why the $75,000 is on the list. Again, I would love to receive funding for everything. This is something that we actually last year did not get funded, and at the end of the year, we were able to, with some end-of-the-year money, actually allocate that towards some one-on-ones. Not one-on-ones, towards some of the interactive classroom technology. And, I believe it was, I want to say we were able to do 40 to 50 this past year, which is wonderful. We need to eventually come up with a regular funding stream for it and not kind of rely on just end-of-the-year money to be able to make that purchase. But in the scheme of things, this is a relatively lower priority for us. I'm not trying to minimize our need, but as I look at the list, myself personally, up through the Parker kitchen upgrade, those are really our critical needs for this particular year because of the code compliance issues. Even some of the safety issues, the deeper I look into the auditorium setup at McCarthy, those are the projects that we'd like to prioritize and really have a thoughtful discussion about. So that concludes what I have for you this evening. Happy to answer any questions. I will, through John, over the next couple of weeks, if we receive any fine-tuned numbers, forward that to you. I'll come also with staff for the December meeting in case there's any questions as you're deliberating. If you would like to see any of our, you might love to see them. If you'd love to see any of our, security plans, please just reach out in the meantime, and we could set up a time to review that. Or if there's any additional information you'd like, please reach out, and I'm happy to provide it. Okay. Great.
Thank you, Dr. Lang. If any materials that I receive from the superintendent, I will forward out to the committee by email.
Thank
Amanda, do you have did someone have a question or no?
Would you like these extras? I don't need them, or
I could, sure,
if you want them. Christmas gifts.
Yeah, Christmas early.
Thank you very much for
Thank
seeing
you.
me.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So next on the agenda, we have Municipal Technology to discuss. These are projects number 1 through 3 on your detail sheets. Tonight we have our Municipal IT Director, Ted Luter. Good evening, Ted.
How you guys doing? Good. The first thing, is number one still on the list?
Yes,
Because we don't need to do that?
Yeah, just to explain everyone, as what happened with the school project, when I sent this out to the committee at that time, it was still on the list, and we still had it as a need. Subsequently, Ted was able to work with our DPW Director and Facilities Director to accomplish that through the operating budget at a slightly less expensive price, so
Yeah.
thank you for doing
Something
that.
we really needed, and having it done sooner is much better for us. So the other two projects are security-related. The first one is to extend our camera network. This has been on the Capitol for several years. Our vision for our camera network is to have all of the town buildings and town properties covered by cameras. We're getting close. The nature of the cameras is that, we don't always know. Things come up and police will say, we want to get eyes on this. Town manager might say, we want eyes on this. So sometimes there are cameras that get added to the network that we're planned for. I think we're, a few years away from getting coverage of, all of the town assets. So that's really what this one's about.
And similar to the schools, those can be seen from the police dispatch,
Correct.
As well as town hall.
as well as town hall, yeah. So basically, you may recall, there was some vandalism at Southwell Fields one time, and you may recall in the news about 9 months or so ago, there was some cemetery vandalism, remember there were, and so these are the type of things that we want to get coverage on, because, camera gives you so much information in terms of preventive, as well as if something does happen, you can then figure out what did happen.
Not only that, but what we learn is that, when you put cameras up and an event does happen, you sometimes realize, well, we have good coverage, but we need to get better coverage at this particular area, because it's not easy to get a wide range of something, but also be able to see something close. So we're, in addition to adding cameras to new locations, we're also looking at the locations we have, looking at past occurrences and trying to figure out what else can we add to that location to make it, give us the data we need when something does happen. And as far as the cemeteries go, that's a challenge, because only one cemetery is on our network, and that's the one right over here. So we have to be creative of how we get that data back to the police department. And it's not as easy to do as the other locations where we're already on the town network.
Like, we had, when there were concerns, you may recall with Ledge Road and the trucks and so forth, Ted and his staff, they were able to mount a camera out there, so we were actually documenting what was going on in terms of truck traffic and safety on
Yep.
the roadway. So they do have the ability to do mobile sites.
Yeah.
It was very helpful.
Any questions?
How many cameras do you need? Are there more in certain locations than others?
There certainly are, yeah. So we're going to be doing this building, redoing this building shortly, and I think we're only putting in maybe 12 cameras, but like the school department, each camera could have up to 4 lenses on it. So currently, in our system, we have 70 cameras. I'd say about half or slightly more than half have more than one lens. If you go to the dog park, you'll see a camera with another camera below it. That has 4 lenses on top, and then the bottom one allows us to move it around, and the police can focus on something. A lot of our cameras are like that, with or without that PTZ camera at the bottom.
So more of those would be better at certain locations?
Where-
Are there different levels of these cameras, I'm assuming?
There are different levels, and they do different things. So one of those cameras, we have one out here, we have one out back. They're great for getting a wide range of eyes, video, but for finer detail, we might need an additional camera. So cameras do different things. Where we can, we want to use the multiple lens cameras because you get more bang for your buck. And so that's what we try to do.
I mean, the thing to keep in mind also is they tend to pay for themselves. We've had a number of incidents at the dog park, as you can imagine, and although it is kind of humorous, but it's also kind of serious, because by having the cameras, the police were able to go back, because they're recorded, and determine what really did happen, which then avoids the issue of overtime, the complaints, and all the other things by resolving it real quick. And then what happens is also prevents future problems, because from those incidents, we were able to basically issue people follow-up actions in terms of basically being banned and so forth from the park. So, you know, I know it sort of sounds, you know, silly of buying cameras and the whole issue of privacy, but on the other hand, they do become a deterrent, and they do really save a lot of person hours in terms of investigatory and other things afterwards.
And I believe you're able to also limit some of the illegal dumping activity that might take place in the rear lot or front lot over the weekends, and
Yep.
so.
So how many, for the purposes of this, how many cameras are you looking to purchase?
I don't have the specific details on that. I can get that to you. It's probably about another 25 cameras.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you know like how many at each of these locations?
So like the school department, I have these locations listed, but I'm not there. This isn't necessarily where they're all going to go,
Okay.
and there's additional locations that aren't on here. No, so it really, each location is its own little project, and
Okay.
it's not you know, we get quotes for each location that work for that location. Typically, you know, one or two 360 views is good for a location, but it really depends on what we're trying to do.
Okay.
Ted, if a committee member had questions, could they, similar
Of
to the
course.
school, they could come and visit you
Please.
one-on-one or call
Absolutely.
you and.
Call
and you
me,
would-
come see me.
And then that way it
we'll-
wouldn't be posted online or in a
Absolutely. I'm
document.
happy to talk
But
about
Ted
it.
would
Sure.
share that with you.
And if I'm not available, Matt, in the back of the room,
Matt Hall, our
we-
network manager, is here
yep,
tonight as well.
we both work together.
I mean, there are some things, I mean, as you know, we have, I don't want to, but as you know, we have like places where we have salt sheds and so forth. By having cameras there and gates and so forth, you're able to also avoid the loss of product.
Which has happened.
So I mean, you know, we don't want to talk too much about it, but the bottom line is it's just like any other corporation or individual with an asset would do, is you now have the technology, because the cost is down, as you see in obviously many residential settings, that now in a commercial or municipal setting, we can do this as deterrence, and also, you know, record license plates and other things that in event dumping or other issues were to happen.
Yeah, anywhere we have network currently, it behooves us to put cameras there because it's simple and easy to do. Where we don't have network, we want to do it, it's just a little bit more difficult to do.
So how do you do it where there's not network?
Generally, wireless.
Wireless?
Yeah, there's cellular, or there are other types of, there's a point-to-point wireless that we've used and will use in the future as well. If we can get a direct line of sight from a location where we have fiber to another location, that's a point-to-point wireless connection. That's easy to do. There's no operational cost. The cellular is a monthly operational cost. Yep. We currently only have one cellular, but I anticipate that we'll have, you know, when all is said and done, we'll probably have 10, 15 of those.
Well, you probably have to with some of the cemeteries.
Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
But it's helpful. I mean, you can imagine having
Yep.
cameras at Varney Beach and Hard Pond and so forth. The police can sort of keep an eye on in terms of crowds, and also if there are issues, you know, of so forth. So it's really, I can tell you, it really has diminished some of the problems that we've had in the past, and therefore that tends to be a net savings to the town.
For this request, you do have specific projects already in mind, right? It's not just a general.
We do have specific projects in mind. Keep in mind, though, that sometimes the police department says, we want a camera here. And we feel it's our job to give them what they want as quickly as possible. So some projects might fall off in that scenario.
Okay.
Yep.
Do you have a cost per camera? Each camera costs different depending on the lens and
There is a cost per camera. There's also a cost for the installation, and that's basically what we're talking about is the installation and the cost of the camera, yeah. We just purchased a new camera server with funds from last year's capital, which allows us now to add more cameras to the network. Prior to purchasing that camera server, we didn't have any more space. We now have space to add another 60 cameras to the network. All right. Second project is door systems. This was on the capital last year and was cut DPW and town offices have this door system. It allows us to hand out cards to employees and be able to get into any building that they have right to get into. There have been issues where having these door systems would secure our assets. The key to this system is that you don't have to have the traditional keys anymore. You just have those. You're nodding because you know it's easy to pass out keys to temporary employees, even to the public. If there's a basketball game going on downstairs, we're not utilizing it yet, but we can pass out keys to the public who we can give them access to, to the gym downstairs and still keep the rest of the building safe. We can do that with, eventually do that with Southwell Field and other places, McCarthy Field if we wanted to. But
You can deactivate it.
you can deactivate it if the card's lost, but it can also, grant the public or employees based on time, during these times. And, if the key's lost, you don't have to worry about replacing locks because you just deactivate the key. We specifically want to get the libraries taken care of. There's kids that go to the library, and anybody can go to the library, and having the building secure is a public safety. Yep.
It's a concern with the.
It is a concern.
It's a concern.
Correct.
All of this is Chief Spinney is concerned and has
Sure.
expressed his concern on a lot of this.
So basically, this project would get the rest of the town buildings onto a standardized system. It's the same system that the school department's using, and make it easier for our employees to, like the facilities department, to get into buildings a lot easier. Another antidote. I had to do some work at the Southwell Field, and there's a key in a lockbox, and I unlocked the lockbox, and there was no key there, so I couldn't get in. If I had the key fob, it wouldn't be an issue at all. In fact, if we had the key fob and someone from the public wanted to get there and the key wasn't in there, we could unlock it remotely for them. So it's
If the police needed to get in.
the police have they have a system like this that we want to join to ours. Their system's older and and needs a little bit of work. It's a perfect time to join them onto ours. With their fobs, they can get into, any building that they need to get into. In fact, they may be able to use their fobs at the school department, or they have a key for the school department as well. So, yes, the police would be able to get in.
So this system would bring all of the town buildings on the same system?
Correct, correct. Right now, the DPW is on the system. The fire department has a standalone system that was put in before we started doing the standardized system. They will come on board. Town offices is nearly complete. We're not utilizing it yet. There's one small piece that we need to resolve that's taking a little time to get done, but and then the rest of the town buildings. Yes, the fire departments are important to us. There have been a number of times where some doors are left unlocked just because they're busy and they have to run out. But with the system, they never need to unlock the doors anymore. They can just leave them locked always and be able to get with a fob. The libraries are important to us. And I think at the end of the day, probably places like Southwell, the McCarthy shack would be places that we would want to put these as well. When you get to small jobs like that, those probably, we could add with operational costs instead of having to come back for one door or something. This will get the bulk of the work done.
Is it the same system as the school's using right now?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
And would it be external doors only, or would you also start looking at internal doors?
It would be primarily external doors, but we are looking at internal doors. In fact, in this building, there is one internal door done, and we're adding 2 more. The internal doors for one of the archive rooms for the clerk, and we are, there's some work that needs to be done on the gym downstairs, the workout room. We're going to put one there and another archive door downstairs. So we put them where it makes sense to put them.
And do these require hardwire networking, or are they wireless?
It requires hardwire, yeah.
that's
Special
included in
hardware.
the
Yes, this includes the installation.
Okay.
And also, if there were an issue to arise, it'd also give us a record of who was in the building, whose card was swiped, what time were they here, which, you don't want to have to consider, but as we know, you've got a large organization, a lot of people going in and out, and at least it does give you that security as well.
The door system and the camera system are both part of the same system. So if someone swipes in, there's a record that's created in the camera server as well to kind of show you who. So it's an easy way of looking at both.
It's nice redundancy.
That's it.
Thank you.
No more questions?
Thank you, Ted.
Thank you.
So that was our last department for tonight. Do any members of the committee wish to discuss anything about any of the hearings that we've heard so far, or is everyone? Okay. Next on the agenda, we have the approval of minutes. I sent out the minutes that Vivian prepared from our previous meeting on November 14th. I just have one correction and one edit that was brought to my attention by a committee member. Just on 2 places. One's, it's a very easy thing to fix. Unfortunately, Jill's last name is misspelled in 2 places, so we'll fix that. It's just an extra E in there. And then on page 3, under Council on Aging, there's a suggestion that to add the cost of the project. So the first sentence on page 3 will read, Senior Center Director Deborah Siriani and Steve Flynn from the Council on Aging explained their $244,758,000 request is for kitchen renovation project at the senior center. So it's just adding in the project cost. So I thought that was a very reasonable request. Do any other members have any suggested edits, or? Okay. If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes as corrected.
Seconded.
Second by Jeff. Did someone make a motion to? Oh, yeah, Mike made the motion, seconded by Jeff. All those in favor of approving the minutes as corrected, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Great, thank you. Minutes are approved. Looking out in the audience, I don't believe I see any members from the public, but does anyone have, if anyone wishes to come up and address the committee, please do so. We will not be meeting next week, of course, because of the Thanksgiving holiday. So we will be meeting on December 5th. The one final thing I just wanted to mention to you, because I know many of the members, this is your first time serving, the last handout that I've provided you, it says FY21 Capital Improvement Planning Worksheet. This is actually an Excel file. If you're a numbers person and you like to play with numbers, I can send you this in Excel, but we will have this on the screen on the computer on our December 5th meeting. Over the years, we've just found it helpful to have this. So basically, it's just very simple. It lists the projects by number, and usually what we do is we go through after we have all the final presentations, and we get a consensus of the committee of what's an absolute must-do priority, and we begin by slowly adding them into the funded category. A majority of this committee can also choose to lower the funding level for a certain project if you think it makes sense. And so what this worksheet does is it allows us to do a number of what-if scenarios so we can get to the target number that we're trying to get to. So it's just, we just found it helpful, so I just wanted to explain that to everyone. We'll have it next week. If you want it in Excel, just email me. I'd be glad to do that. So our next meeting will be December 5th.
So all you have is the town clerk, and then you,
Yes, good, thank you for reminding me. So at the December 5th meeting, we'll hear from our town clerk, Tricia Zoris. She'll explain her project, and then we'll go right into discussion and deliberations. If anyone has anything they want to bring up at that time, they may do so. Does anyone have anything else, or if not, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn? So moved by Jeff. Do we have a second? Seconded by Amina. All those in favor of adjourning, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.